Hello everyone, it is Pacific Sky ASMR. You're gonna hear the bed creaking again. But today I thought I would do another reading of Stephen King's different seasons, specifically the story, The Body. So last time we left off on page 306. The story itself started at page 292, I believe. 293. And it's about to enter. It's like 3 or 4 pages of like the regular story, and then it's gonna be how do you put it? Like it's the character Gordy LeChance, and he is like the author insert for Stephen King, and he writes a story. So I'm gonna see if I don't think I'm gonna be able to get through, because it's like he just put the whole story that Gordy wrote into the middle of that, and I'm like, we get it. Gordy is an author from Maine. You know who you are, Stephen. But anyway, I'm gonna read me some Stephen King. I'll see if I can get another like 10 pages in. I think I should be able to. It's just that you never realize how long it takes to read something until you read it out loud, which is the crazy thing, because like I could get through 10 pages in like 5 minutes, but then reading it out loud I'm like blah, blah, blah. But I will start back from where we were. So my dad'll hide me anyway, Chris said. He's on a really mean streak this time. He shook his head sullenly. To hell, it's worth a hiding. Okay, Teddy said, getting up. He was still grinning like crazy, ready to break into his high-pitched, cackling laugh at any second. Let's all get there at Vern's house after lunch. What can we tell him about supper? Chris said, you and me and Gordy can say we're eating at Vern's. And I'll tell my mom I'm coming over at Chris's. Or I'm eating over at Chris's. Vern said, that will work unless there was some emergency we couldn't control, or unless any of the parents got together. And neither Vern's folks or Chris's had a phone. Back then, there were a lot of families which still considered a telephone a luxury, especially families of the shirt-tail variety, and none of us came from the upper crust. My dad was retired. Vern's dad worked in the mill and was still driving a 1952 DeSoto. Teddy's mom had a house on Danbury Street, and she took in a boarder whenever she could get one. She didn't have one that summer. The furnished room to let sign had been up in the parlor window since June. And Chris's dad was always on a mean streak, more or less. He was a drunk who got welfare off and on, mostly on, and spent most of his time hanging out in Sookie's Tavern with Junior Merrill, Ace Merrill's old man, and a couple of other local rum pots. These ancient words. Chris didn't talk much about his dad, but we all know he hated him like poison. Chris was marked up every 2 weeks or so. Bruises on his cheeks and neck or one eye swelled up and as colorful as a sunset. And once he came into school with a big clumsy bandage on the back of his head. Other times he never got to school at all. His mom would call him in sick because he was too lamed up to come in. Chris was smart, really smart, but he played truant a lot, and Mr. Halliburton, the town truant officer, was always showing up at Chris's house, driving his old black Chevrolet with the No Riders sticker on the corner of the windshield. If Chris was being truant, and Bertie, as we called him, always behind his back, of course, caught him, he would haul him back to school and see that Chris got detention for a week. But if Bernie found out that Chris was home because his father had beaten the shit out of him, Bertie just went away and didn't say boo to a cuckoo bird. It never occurred to me to question this set of priorities until about 20 years later. The year before, Chris had been suspended from school for 3 days. A bunch of milk money disappeared when it was Chris's turn to be room monitor and collect it, and because he was at Chambers from those no-account Chamberses, he had to take a hike even though he always swore he never hawked the money. That was the time Mr. Chambers put Chris in the hospital for an overnight stay. When his dad heard Chris was suspended, he broke Chris's nose and his right wrist. Chris came from a bad family, all right, and everyone thought he would turn out bad, including Chris. His brothers had lived up to the town's expectations admirably. Frank, the eldest, ran away from home when he was 17, joined the Navy, and ended up doing a long stretch in Portsmouth for rape and criminal assault. The next eldest, Richard, his right eye was all funny and jittery, which was why everyone called him Eyeball, had dropped out of high school in the 10th grade and chumped around with Charlie and Billy Tessio and their J.D. buddies. Juvenile detention, I'm presuming? I think all that'll work, I told Chris. What about John and Marty? John and Marty D-Spain were 2 other members of our regular game. They're still away, Chris said. They won't be back until Monday. Oh, that's too bad. So are we set? Vern asked, still squirming. He didn't want the conversation sidetracked even for a minute. I guess we are, Chris said. Who wants to play some more scat? No one did. We were too excited to play cards. We climbed down from the treehouse, climbed the fence into the vacant lot, and played 3-fly 6-grounders for a while with Vern's old friction-taped baseball. But that was no fun either. All we could think about was that kid Brower. I'd never known to say Brower or Brewer. Kid Brower, hit by a train, and how we were going to see him, or what was left of him. Around 10 o'clock, we all drifted away home to fix it with our parents. I got to my house at 11:15 after stopping at the drugstore to check out the paperbacks. I did that every couple of days to see if there were any new John D. McDonald's. McDonald's. I had a quarter, and I figured if there was, I'd take it along. But there were only the old ones, and I'd read most of those half a dozen times. See, we have to establish that he's a reader. He's a man of intelligence in academia. A boy, at this point. When I got home, the car was gone, and I remembered that my mom and some of her hen party friends had gone to Boston to see a concert. A great old concert goer, my mother. And why not? Her only kid was dead, and she had to do something to take her mind off of it. I guess that sounds pretty bitter, and I guess if you'd been there, you'd understand why I felt that way. Dad was out back, passing a fine spray from the hose over his ruined garden. You couldn't tell it was a lost cause from his glum face. You sure could by looking at the garden itself. The soil was a light, powdery gray. Everything in it was dead except for the corn, which had never grown so much as a single edible ear. Dad said he'd never known how to water a garden. It had to be Mother Nature or nobody. He'd water too long in one spot and drown the plants. The next row of plants were dying of thirst. He could never hit a happy medium. But he didn't talk about it often. He'd lost a son in April and a garden in August. If he didn't want to talk about either one, I guess that was his privilege. It just bugged me that he'd given up talking about everything else too. That was taking democracy too fucking far. Hi, Daddy, I said, standing beside him. I offered him the Rolos I'd bought at the drugstore. Want one? Hello, Gordon. No thanks. He kept on flicking the fine spray over the hopeless gray earth. Be okay if I camp out in Vern Tessio's backfield tonight with some of the guys? What guys? Vern, Teddy Duchamp, maybe Chris. I expected him to start right in on Chris, how Chris was bad company, a rotten apple from the bottom of the barrel, a thief and an apprentice juvenile delinquent. But he just sighed and said, I suppose it's okay. Great, thanks. I turned to go into the house and check out what was on the boob tube when he stopped me with, those are the only people you want to be with, aren't they, Gordon? Rough. I looked back at him, braced for an argument, but there was no argument in him that morning. It would have been better if there had been, I think. His shoulders were slumped. His face, pointed toward the dead garden, not toward me, sagged. There was a certain unnatural sparkle in his eyes that might have been tears. Aw, Dad, they're okay. Of course they are. A thief and 2 Phoebes. Oh, I get it. Fine company for my son. Vern Tessio isn't feeble, I said. Teddy was a harder case to argue. 12 years old and still in the 5th grade, my dad said, and that time he slept over. When the Sunday paper came the next morning, he took an hour and a half to read the funny pages. That made me mad, because I didn't think he was being fair. He was judging Fern the way he judged all my friends, from having seen them off and on, mostly going in and out of the house. He was wrong about them, and when he called Chris a thief, I always saw red, because he didn't know anything about Chris. I wouldn't tell him that, but if I pissed him off, he'd keep me home. And he wasn't really mad anyway. Not like he got at the supper table sometimes raining so loud that nobody wanted to eat. Now he just looked sad and tired and used. He was 63 years old enough to be my grandfather. My mom was 55, no spring chicken either. When she and Dad got married, they tried to start a family right away. My mom got pregnant and had a miscarriage. She miscarried 2 more, and the doctor told her she'd never be able to carry a baby to term. I got all of the stuff, chapter and verse. Whenever one of them was lecturing me, you understand. They wanted me to think I was a special delivery from God, and I wasn't appreciating my great good fortune in being conceived when my mother was 42 and starting to gray. I wasn't appreciating my great good fortune, and I wasn't appreciating her tremendous pain and sacrifices either. Period. 5 years after the doctor said Mom would never have a baby, she got pregnant with Dennis. She carried him for 8 months, and then he just sort of fell out, all 8 pounds of it. My father used to say that if she carried Dennis To term, the kid would have weighed 15 pounds. The doctor said, well, sometimes nature fools us, but he'll be the only one you'll ever have. Thank God for him and be content. 10 years later, she got pregnant with me. So how old? His brother must be like 22, I think. Or was 22. He's 10 years older. She not only carried me to term, the doctor had to use forceps to yank me out. Did you ever hear of such a fucked up family? I came to the world the child of 2 Geritol chuggers, not to go on and on about it. And my only brother was playing league baseball in the big kids park before I even got out of diapers. Sorry, Gordy. Rough. In the case of my mom and dad, one gift from God had been enough. I won't say they treated me badly, and they sure never beat me, but I was a hell of a big surprise, and I guess when you get into your 40s, you're not as partial to surprises as you were in your 20s. After I was born, Mom got the operation her hen party friends referred to as the Band-Aid. I guess she wanted to make 100% sure that there wouldn't be any more gifts from God. When I got to college, I found out that I'd beaten long odds just by not being born, and I apologize, this is the word they used, retarded. Although I think my dad had his doubts when he saw my friend Vern taking 10 minutes to puzzle out the dialogue in Beetle Bailey. Stephen King, be writing words. That business about being ignored, I could never really pin it down until I did a book report in high school on this novel called The Invisible Man. When I agreed to do the book for Miss Hardy, I thought it was going to be the science fiction story about the guy in bandages and Foster Grants. Claude Rains played him in the movies. When I found out this was a different story, I tried to get the book back, but Miss Hardy wouldn't let me off the hook. I ended up being real glad. This Invisible Man is about a Negro. You see what I mean? It's old words. Nobody ever notices him at all unless he fucks up. People look right through him. When he talks, nobody answers. He's like a black ghost. Stephen King. Once I got into it, I ate that book up like it was a John D. McDonald, because that cat, Raph Allison, was talking about me. At the supper table, it was, Denny, how many did you strike out? And Denny, who asked you to the Sadie Hawkins dance? And Denny, I want to talk to you man to man about that car we were looking at. I'd say, pass the butter. And Dad would say, Denny, are you sure the army is what you want? I'd say, pass the butter, someone, okay? And Mom would ask Denny if he wanted to pick him up one of the Pendleton shirts on sale downtown. And I ended up getting the butter myself. One night when I was a 9, just to see what happened, I said, please pass these goddamn spuds. And my mom said, Denny, Auntie Grace called today and she asked after you and Gordon. Please pass those goddamn spuds. The night Dennis graduated with honors from Castle Rock High School, I played sick and stayed home. I got Stevie Daramont's older brother Royce to buy me a bottle of Wild Irish Rose, and I drank half of it and puked in my bed in the middle of the night. In a family situation like that, you're supposed to either hate the older brother or idolize him hopelessly. At least that's what they teach you in college psychology. Bullshit, right? But so far, I can tell, I didn't feel either way about Dennis. We rarely argued and never had a fist fight. That would have been ridiculous. Can you see a 14-year-old boy finding someone to beat up his 4-year-old brother about? And our folks were always a little too impressed with him to burden him with the care of his kid brother, so he never resented me the way some older kids come to resent their sibs. When Denny took me with him somewhere, it was of his own free will. And those are some of the happiest times I can remember. Hey, LaChance, who the fuck is that? My kid brother, and you better watch your mouth, Davis. He'll beat the crap out of you. Gordy's tough. They gathered around me for a moment, huge, impossibly tall, just a moment of interest like a patch of sun. They are so big, they are so old. Hey, kid, this wet man really your big brother? I nod shyly. He's a real asshole, ain't he, kid? I nod again, and everybody, Dennis included, roars with laughter. Then Dennis claps his hand together twice, briskly, and says, come on, we gonna have a practice or stand around here like a bunch of pussies? They run to their positions, already peppering the ball around the infield. Go sit over there on the bench, Gordy. Be quiet. Don't bother anybody. I go sit over there on the bench. That's like the John Mulaney quote. I was over on the bench. I go sit over on the bench. I am good. I feel impossibly small under the sweet summer clouds. I watch my brother pitch. I don't bother anybody. But there weren't many times like that. Sometimes he read me bedtime stories that were better than Mom's. Mom's stories are about the gingerbread man and the 3 little pigs. Okay stuff, but Dennis's were about stuff like Bluebeard and Jack the Ripper. It's intense. He also had a version of Billy Goat's Gruff where the troll under the bridge ended up the winner. And as I already said, he taught me the game of cribbage and how to do a box shuffle. Not that much, but hey, in this world you take what you can get, am I right? As I grew older, my feelings of love for Dennis were replaced with an almost clinical awe. The kind of awe so Christians feel for God, I guess. And when he died, I was mildly shocked and mildly sad, the way I imagine those same so Christians must have felt when Time magazine said God was dead. Let me put it this way. I was as sad for Denny's dying as I was when I heard on the radio that Dan Blocker had died. I'd seen them both about as frequently, and Denny never got even got any reruns. These are some phrases, man. He was buried in a closed coffin with the American flag on top. They took the flag off the box before they finally stuck it on the ground and folded it, the flag, not the box, into a cocked hat and gave it to my mom. My parents just fell to pieces. 4 months had been long enough to put them back together again. I didn't know if they'd ever be whole again. Mr. and Mrs. Dumpty. Denny's room was in suspended animation, just one door down from my room, suspended animation or maybe in a time warp. The Ivy League college pennants were still on the walls, and the senior pictures of the girls he had dated were still tucked into the mirror, where he had stood for seemed like hours at a stretch, combing his hair back into a ducktail like Elvis's. The stack of Trues and Sports Illustrateds remaining on his desk, the dates looking more and more antique as time passed. It's the kind of thing you see in sticky sentimental movies, but it wasn't sentimental to me. It was terrible. I didn't go into Dennis's room unless I had to, because I kept expecting that he would be behind the door or under the bed or in the closet. Mostly it was a closet that preyed on my mind. If my mother sent me in to get Denny's postcard album or a shoebox of photographs so she could look at them, I would imagine that door swinging slowly open while I stood rooted to the spot with horror. I would imagine him pallid and bloody in the darkness, the side of his head walloped in, a gray-veined cake of blood and brains drying on his shirt. I would imagine his arms coming up, his bloody hands hooking into claws. He would be croaking, "It should have been you, Gordon. It should have been you." That's rough. Okay. So that was 7 pages, and we're about to start in on the story that Cordy writes. And so everything from here until page 326. So I'll probably get through just part of it, but maybe more. We'll see. I'll see if I can get through it, but it's a really long little story that he has. It's 13 pages of this book, but it's called Stud City by Gordon LaChance, originally published in Greenspun Quarterly, issue 45, fall 1970, used by permission. March. Chico stands at that window, arms crossed, elbows on the ledge that divides upper and lower panes, naked, looking out, breath fogging the glass. A draft against his belly, bottom right pane is gone, blocked by a piece of cardboard. Chico. He doesn't turn. She doesn't speak again. He can see a ghost of her in the glass, in his bed, sitting, blankets pulled up in apparent defiance of gravity. Her eye makeup is smeared into the deep hollows under her eyes. Chico shifts his gaze beyond her ghost, out beyond the house. Raining. Patches of snow sloughed away to reveal the bald ground underneath. He sees last year's dead grass, a plastic toy, Billy's, a rusty rake. Ooh. His brother Johnny dodges. His brother Johnny's Dodge is up on blocks, the D-tired wheels sticking out like stumps. He remembers times he and Johnny worked on it, listening to the super hits and boss oldies from WLAM in Lewiston pour out of Johnny's old transistor radio. A couple of times, Johnny would give him a beer. "She gonna run fast, Chico," Johnny would say. "She gonna eat up everything on this road from Gates Falls to Castle Rock. Wait till we get that hearse shifter in her." But that had been then, and this is now. Beyond Johnny's Dodge was the highway. Route 14 goes to Portland in New Hampshire south all the way to Canada north. If you turn left on US 1 at Thomaston. "Stud City," Chico says to the glass. He smokes his cigarette. "What?" "Nothing, babe." "Chico?" Her voice is puzzled. "He will have to change the sheets before Dad gets back." She bled. "Ew." "What?" "I love you, Chico." "That's right." Dirty March. These words. "You're some old whore," Chico thinks. Dirty, staggering, old baggy tits March with rain in her face. "Why are you being so mean to her?" "This room used to be Johnny's," he says suddenly. "Who?" "My brother." Oh, where is he? In the army, Chico says, but Johnny isn't in the army. He'd been working the summer before at Oxford Plains Speedway, and a car went out of control and skidded across the infield toward the pit area. Johnny had been changing the back tires on a Chevy Charger class stalker. Some guys shouted at him to look out, but Johnny never heard them. One of the guys who shouted was Johnny's brother Chico. Oh, I didn't like how it put it like that. I was like, Oops, he saw all that then. Aren't you cold? She asks. No, my feet. A little. And he thinks suddenly, well, my God, nothing happened to Johnny that isn't going to happen to you too, sooner or later. He sees it again, though. The skating Ford Mustang, the knobs of his brother's spine picked out in a series of dimpled shadows against the white of his Hanes t-shirt. He had been hunkered down, pulling one of the Chevy's back tires. There had been time to see rubber flaying off the tires of the runaway Mustang, to see its hanging muffler scraping up sparks from the infield. It struck Johnny, even as Johnny tried to get to his feet. The yellow shout of flame. Well, Chico thinks, it could have been slow. And he thinks of his grandfather. Hospital smells, pretty young nurses burying bedpans, a last papery breath. Were there any good ways? He shivers and wonders about God. He touches his small silver St. Christopher's medal that hangs on a chain around his neck. He is not a Catholic, and he's surely not a Mexican. His real name is Edward May, and his friends all call him Chico because his hair is black and he greases it back with Brill cream, and he wears boots with pointed toes and Cuban heels. Not Catholic, but he wears this medallion. Maybe if Johnny had been wearing one, the runaway Mustang would have missed him. You never know. Okay, so, fun stuff. He smokes and stares out the window, and behind him the girl gets out of bed and comes to him quickly, almost mincing, maybe afraid he'll turn around and look at her. She puts a warm hand on his back. Her breasts push against his side, her belly touches his buttock. Just one. We don't know which. It is cold. It's this place. Do you love me, Chico? You bet. He says offhandedly, and then more seriously, you were cherry. What is that? You were a virgin. The hand reaches higher. One finger traces the skin on the nape of his neck. I said, didn't I? Was it hard? Did it hurt? She laughs. No, but I was scared. They watch the rain. A new Oldsmobile goes by on 14, spraying up water. Why do you say all those mean things about her? Why do you call her old? She sounds young. Maybe not. Okay. Stud City, Chico says. What? That guy. He's going Stud City in his new stud car. She kisses the place her finger has been touching gently, and he brushes at her if she were a fly. What's the matter? He turns to her. Her eyes flick down to his penis and then up again hastily. She's real quick. Her arms twitch to cover herself, and then she remembers that they never do stuff like that in the movies, and she drops them to her sides again. Her hair is black, and her skin is winter white, the color of cream. Her breasts are firm, her belly perhaps a little too soft. One flaw to her mind, Chico thinks, that this isn't the movies. She not sexy? Jane? What? He can feel himself getting ready. Not beginning, but getting ready. If this goes where I think it's going to go, I'm not going to go that hard. I don't think I'll read that. It's all right, he says. We're friends. He eyes her deliberately, letting himself reach at her in all sorts of ways. When he looks at her face again, it is flushed. Do you mind me looking at you? No. No, Chico. Yeah, it is. It is. Some things I will not be saying. Okay, well, let's see. So, she steps back, closes her eyes, sits on the bed, and leans back, legs spread. He sees all of her. The muscles, the little muscles on the insides of her thighs, they're jumping uncontrolled, and this suddenly excites him more than the taut cones of her breasts or the mild pink pearl of her. I will not say. Excitement trembles in him, some stupid bozo on a spring. Love may be as divine as the poets say, he thinks, but sex is Bozo the Clown bouncing around on a spring. How could a woman look at an erect penis without going off into mad gales of laughter? This guy knows what's up. The rain beats against the roof, against the window, against the sodden cardboard patch blocking the glassless lower plane. Pain. He presses his hand against his chest, looking for a moment like a stage woman about to orate. His hand is cold. He drops it to his side. Open your eyes. We're friends, I said. Obediently, she opens them. She looks at him. Her eyes appear violet now. The rainwater running down the window makes rippling patterns on her face, her neck, her breast. Stretching across the bed, her belly has been pulled tight. She is perfect in her moment. Oh, she says. Oh, Chico, it feels so funny. Ew, a shiver runs through her. She has curled her toes involuntarily. He can see the insteps of her feet. Her insteps are pink. Chico. Chico. You couldn't have picked a better name. Better nickname. What was his real name again? Edward. Edward would have been better to say than Chico. He steps toward her. His body is shivering and her eyes widen. She says something, one word, but he can't tell what it is. Ah! Chico. This isn't the time to ask. He half kneels before her for just a second, looking at the floor with frowning concentration, touching her legs just above the knees. He measures the tide within himself. Its pull is thoughtless, fantastic. He pauses a little longer. The only sound is the tinny tick of the alarm clock on the bed table, standing brassy-legged atop a pile of Spider-Man comic books. Her breathing flutters faster and faster. His muscles slide smoothly as he dives upward and forward. Just imagine that. They begin. It's better this time. Outside, the rain goes on, washing away the snow. A half hour later, Chico shakes her out of a light doze. We gotta move, he said. Dad and Virginia will be home pretty quick. She looks at her wristwatch and sits up. This time she makes no attempt to shield herself. Her whole tone, her body English, has changed. She has not matured, although she probably believes she has, or learned anything more complex than tying a shoe. But her tone has changed just the same. He nods, and she smiles tentatively at him. He reaches for the cigarettes on the bed table. As she draws on her panties, he thinks of a line from an old novelty song. Keep playing till I shoot through blue. Play your didgeridoo. Tie Me Kangaroo Down by Rolf Harris. He grins. That was a song Johnny used to sing. It ended, so he tanned his hide when he died, Clyde, and that's it hanging on the shed. She hooks her bra and begins putting on her blouse. What are you smiling about, Chico? Nothing, he says. Zip me up. He goes to her still naked and zips her up. He kisses her cheek. Go on in the bathroom and do your face if you want, he says. Just don't take too long, okay? She goes up the hall gracefully, and Chico watches her, smoking. She is a tall girl, taller than he, and she has to duck her head a little going through the bathroom door. How big is she? Were, doors, that much smaller back in, this was 1970, so, the 60s? How big is she? Is she, 7 feet tall? I'm, almost 6 feet tall. I don't have to duck going through a bathroom door. How big are they? How big is she? Chico finds his underpants under the bed. He puts them in the dirty clothes bag hanging just inside the closet door and gets another pair from the bureau. He puts them on, and then, while walking back to the bed, he slips and almost falls in a patch of wetness the square of cardboard has let in. Don't know what I thought it was going to be the wetness of. That's funnier, though. God damn, he whispers resentfully. God damn. He looks around at the room, which has been Johnny's until Johnny died. Why did I tell her he was in the army, for Christ's sake, he wonders, a little uneasily. Fiberboard wall so thin he can hear Dad and Virginia going at it at night that don't quite make it all the way to the ceiling. The floor has a slightly crazy hip-shot angle, so that the room's door will only stay open if you block it open. If you forget, it swings stealthily closed as soon as your back is turned. On the far wall is a movie poster from Easy Rider. 2 men went looking for America and couldn't find it anywhere. The room had more life when Johnny lived here. Chico doesn't know how or why, only that it's true. And he knows something else as well. He knows that sometimes the room spooks him at night. Sometimes he thinks that the closet door will swing open and Johnny will be standing there. Do you see what I mean? It's all just, it's just Gordy. It is Stephen King is Gordy is Chico. Do you see what I mean? Sometimes he thinks that the closet door will swing open and Johnny will be standing there, his body charred and twisted and blackened, his yellow teeth, dentures poking out of wax that is partially melted and rehardened, and Johnny will be whispering, "Get out of my room, Chico. If you lay a hand on my dodge, I'll fucking kill you. Got it?" Got it, bro, Chico thinks. For a moment, he stands still, looking at the rumpled sheet spotted with the girl's blood. And then he spreads the blankets up in one quick gesture. Here, right here. How do you feel like that, Virginia? How do you like that, Virginia? How does that grab your snatch? He puts on his pants, his engineer boots, finds his sweater. He's dry combing his hair in front of the mirror when she comes out of the john. She looks classy. Her too soft stomach doesn't show in the jumper. She looks at the bed, does a couple things to it, and he comes out looking made instead of just spread up. Good, Chico says. She laughs a little self-consciously and pushes a lock of hair behind her ear, literally. It is an evocative, poignant gesture. Let's go, he says. They push out through the hall and the living room. Jane pauses in front of the tinted studio photograph on top of the TV. It shows his father in Virginia, a high school-aged Johnny, a grammar school-aged Chico, and an infant Billy. In the picture, Johnny is holding Billy. All of them have fixed stone grins, all except Virginia, whose face is its sleepy, indecipherable self. That picture, Chico remembers, was taken less than a month after his dad married the bitch. You don't like Virginia? Is that your mother and father? It's my father, Chico says. She's my stepmother, Virginia. Come on. Is she still that pretty? Jane asks, picking up her coat and handing Chico his windbreaker. I guess my old man thinks so, Chico says. They step out into the shed. It's a damp and drafty place. The wind hoots through the cracks in its slapstick walls. There's a pile of old bald tires. Johnny's old bike that Chico inherited when he was 10 and which he promptly wrecked, a pile of detective magazines, returnable Pepsi bottles, a greasy monolithic engine block, an orange crate full of paperback books, and old paint-by-numbers of a horse stain on dusty green grass. Come on, Stephen. Ask Gordy. Ask Chico, please. You need to give me some periods in there, Jesus. Chico helps her pick her way outside. The rain is falling with disheartening steadiness. Chico's old sedan stands in a driveway puddle, looking downhearted. Even up on blocks and with a piece of plastic covering the place where the windshield should go, Johnny's Dodge has more class. Chico's car is a Buick. The paint is dull and flowered with spots of rust. The front seat upholstery has been covered with a brown army blanket. Hey, remember though, you said he was in the army. Makes it look believable. A large button pinned to the sun visor on the passenger side says, I want it every day. There's a rusty starter assembly on the back seat. If it ever stops raining, he will clean it, he thinks. Maybe put it into the Dodge. Maybe not. The Buick smells musty. His own starter grinds a long time before the Buick starts up. Is it your battery? She asks. Just the goddamn rain, I guess. He backs out into the road, flicking on the windshield wipers and pausing for a moment to look at the house. It is a completely unappetizing aqua color. I like the taste of aqua colors. I think that'd be nice. Aqua. The shed sticks off from it at a ragtag, double-jointed angle, tar paper and peeled-looking shingles. The radio comes on with a blare, and Chico shuts it off at once. There's the beginning of a Sunday afternoon headache behind his forehead. They ride past the Grange Hall and the volunteer fire department and Brownie's store. Sally Morrison's T-Bird is parked by Brownie's high-test pump. Chico raises a hand to her as he turns off onto the old Lewiston Road. Who's that? Sally Morrison. Pretty lady. Very neutral. He feels for her cigarettes. She's been married twice and divorced twice. Now she's the town pump, if you believe half the talk that goes on in this shit-ass little town. She looks young. Gonna do one more page, I think. She is. Have you ever... He slides his hand up her leg and smiles. No, he says. My brother, maybe, but not me. I like Sally, though. She's got her alimony and her big white bird. She doesn't care what people say about her. It starts to seem like a long drive. The Andrewscoggin off to the right is slaty and sullen. I don't know what that is. The ice is all out of it now. Jane has grown quiet and thoughtful. The only sound is the steady snap of the windshield wipers. When the car rolls through the dips in the road, there is ground fog, waiting for evening when it will creep out of these pockets and take over the whole river road. They cross into Auburn, and Chico drives the cutoff and swings on Amino Avenue. The 4 lanes are nearly deserted, and all the suburban homes look packaged. They see one little boy in a yellow plastic raincoat walking up the sidewalk, carefully stepping in all the puddles. That is a reference to It. Go, man, Chico says softly. What? Jane asks. Nothing, babe. Go back to sleep. She laughs a little doubtfully. Chico turns up Keston Street and into the driveway of one of the packaged houses. He doesn't turn off the ignition. Come in and I'll give you cookies, she says. He shakes his head. I have to get back. I know. She puts her arms around him and kisses him. Thank you for the most wonderful time of my life. No, girl, it wasn't. He smiles suddenly. His face shines. It's nearly magical. I'll see you Monday, Janie Jane. Still friends, right? You know we are, she says and kisses him again. But when he cups a breast through her jumper, she pulls away. Don't. My father might see. He lets her go, only a little of the smile left. She gets out of the car quickly and runs through the rain to the back door. A second later, she's gone. Chico pauses for a moment to light a cigarette, and then he backs out of the driveway. The Buick stalls, and the starter seems to grind forever before the engine manages to catch. It is a long ride home. All right. That's where I'm going to call it for now. So we started at, let me see, 306. And we've made it to page 320. And we still have another 100 pages? 110 pages? Because it's going to take forever. But yes, that was the part I left off in. I don't know. Interesting story so far. Like I said in the last one, what is it called? Stand By Me. Stand By Me is also one of my favorite movies. I love Stand By Me. But it definitely, you couldn't put, like, everything that Stephen King packed in the novella into one movie. Especially when he has, like, something like that, where it's, like, that story. Like, maybe if it was, like, a, if they ever filmed a, what is the word? Like a limited series. Like, you know, like only, like, six episodes or something like that. They could put in, like, a moment like that. But I was like, this is just Gordy trying to, like, untraumatize his child. By being like, I'm Chico, and my brother died like this. Which is just like Gordy. Silly. You see him in the closet. But, no. Funny stuff. This will be the second video for it. If I read, an average of, like, 15 pages each time, it'll be another, like, 6, 7 videos. Maybe a little bit more. I can read a little bit more each time, too. But, hope you all enjoyed. I apologize for my usage of one naughty word. Not the swears, but the accidental. He wrote it in there. I would not say anything worse than that, but yes. Won't use it again as long as it's not used. But also, and then some other stuff, I don't know. It's like, it's meant to mimic the olden days. That's the hard thing about Stephen King. Like, imagine if I read, like It on camera. I mean, that would take forever. That would take literally like I couldn't even, 50 hours. That thing is like a brick. It's literally a brick. It's like a Bible. But now just some of the stuff in that one too, I'd be like, I don't know. But I might read, you know what, there's another couple of books I might try and read in videos too if I want to. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt might be one of them. But that book is also, like, this is 100 and something pages in small text. Oh, Stephen King jump scare. But The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt is 1,200 pages. Maybe longer, I don't recall. 1,700. I've only read it twice. Only. All the way through. Back to back. And it sucked. But it is fun to read. Especially the second part of it. But I hope you all enjoyed. I will do another reading probably sometime later. I'll be gone this weekend out of town. But maybe sometime next week I'll do some more reading. So, thank you for watching. This is Pacific Sky, signing out.